다 로그 리셋 도와리다 헤이 세누토리에 아만할 몬무스 이마게이지스크 하페.
Have you ever experienced dedicating hours or even days of your life into something only for it to slowly dawn on you that it was all pointless?
Would you like to?
Whether you have or not, it's probably not something you want to experience, but I was watching Northern Lion play the game of Sisyphus, and one particularly excruciating failure made me realize just how unique the game is for evoking that feeling of suffering. There is no game out there forcing you to devote your constant attention for a time-gated multiple hours to maintain progress, only to yank away a random amount of progress at the smallest error. The game of Sisyphus is the most effective way to feel this agony of painstakingly slowly learning hours of progress is slipping into nothingness, and despite the framing I've done, I think that's a good thing. Maybe we could all use a little suffering. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The game of Sisyphus is a rage game, a suffercore or a masocore game, a foddy-like. All of these describe the still unnamed genre of games that essentially make gaining progress difficult and losing progress easy. How each game delivers it varies, but that is the thesis of Jump King, Only Up, a difficult game about climbing, Chained Together, Pogo Stuck, Alt F4, and most importantly, Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy, who is basically the grandfather of the genre and inspired all of these games. And I want to briefly touch on it and its influence on the genre because it'll make it a lot easier to explain what makes Sisyphus tick and unique. Two main things characterize Getting Over It, the first being the strange controls that immediately hit you. Your only control over your character is this hammer that extends you. You can move it 360 degrees centered around yourself and use it to push yourself, which all in all was a very clunky and untraditional way to control. This would be a fork in the road for future games inspired by Foddy, where some would embrace kooky and restrictive controls while others would focus on difficulty or game length. The other thing characterizing Getting Over It is difficulty and progress erasure. But difficulty is a loaded word for all of these games. In this video, it means technical challenges and mastering them. There is a beautiful phenomenon. There is a beautiful phenomenon in it or a difficult game or Jump King, where essentially you'd be challenged to master its simple controls in every which way by the end of the game. It's why you take many hours on your first time at Getting Over It and 10 minutes on your second. The game's presented a new way to platform and forced you to do its hardest tricks repeatedly so they no longer stop you. That's as opposed to Only Up, Alt F4, or Chained Together, which give you familiar WASD movement and had to pride itself on simpler tricks and length, hoping players made more mistakes over a longer time since there's more game to do. Which is why the fastest glitchless speedruns for the former category are much shorter than the latter. And using speedruns is my metric of showing that the best, most studied players in each game aren't necessarily slower on games across the divide. Honing in on the progress erasure factor, it can't be understated how Bennett Foddy revolutionized losing progress. Games have been handing you save points for decades now. They haven't been bold enough to let you fall back to the beginning since arcade cabinets and cartridges that couldn't hold saves. Getting Over It can save. If you quit and relaunch, it places you where you left off, but its design still lets you lose progress at every point with a mistake. And those mistakes are definitely saved, as Bennett Foddy happily reminds you after your first.
Just find a safe place to stop and quit the game. And don't worry, I'll save your progress, always. Even your mistakes.
You could compare this to Dark Souls or even Demon Souls, which was made 10 years prior to it, and infamously puts your respawn point over 2 minutes away from most bosses, so you may spend a couple minutes getting there, might even die to obstacles on the way first, and then waste another 0 to 3 minutes losing to the boss, only to be set all the way back. Repeat this for tens of attempts, and it'll definitely affect you, even if the effect is numbing yourself to setbacks. But here's the thing. The setback is instant. You die to Flame Lurk and your PS5 respawns you in like 2 seconds. In getting over it, you can feel your heart sink in tune with your character for a grueling few seconds as you wonder just where is your mistake going to land you. Soon enough, you find yourself thankful just for losing a tiny bit of progress instead of the whole distance. And even then, you're not fully in control of your progress. Without respawns anchoring your progress, you could backslide multiple times. The only true anchor is the beginning. Most Massacre games operate this way, tactically placing quote-unquote checkpoints that you could easily miss on the way down. It just depends on what catastrophic error you make and where. So where does the game of Sisyphus land amongst all of this? 6 years after getting over it, the game of Sisyphus released on April 11th, 2024 by the indie team known as Cream or Cream Games. Really missed their chance to be the Cream team, but anyway, sorry. The Sisyphus, at a glance, looks like a heap of garbage. I don't mean to be rude, I just feel like I'm being honest. This game looks like a handful of generic textures and Unity Store assets cobbled together and thrown onto a 30-degree angle. The surrounding environment inspires nothing, so all you have to focus on is the 30 quote-unquote levels in front of you, because this game essentially chunks itself into 30 sections, where each section has a specific vibe, a gimmick, a challenge, a look. Sometimes it's butt ugly butter blocks breaking the ground in waves or shitballs. Other times it's this children's pirate cruise ship aesthetic or like a Don Quixote type beach, and there's plenty of in between. As for the game itself, it's what it sounds like if you're familiar with the game of Sisyphus. WASD and can jump, nothing unusual, but can you even call it your character without the ball? There is no reason to move forward without the ball, so for all intents and purposes, that ball is your other half. And that dynamic is crucial. You push the ball just by walking into it, and then strafing adjust your angle on pushing forward with extra controls to spin the ball to the left with left mouse, and right with right mouse. Pretty much every second you're pushing forward, the ball is skewing left or right, and threatening to slip out of your grasp, so you need to devote your attention to spinning it the opposite way. Moreover, there's obstacles in each level that'll give you pause and make you correct your angle in some way. Nothing too deep, all things considered. I don't think I'm out of pocket for saying this game is quite easy, and that's just due to the simple game mechanics that never get complicated. At no point do you have to run on top of the ball like a cartoon character, or kick it like you're competing for the cup, but you absolutely could do either of these things with the controls given. Jump King would force you to learn how to bounce off walls and master awkward medium jumps. Game about climbing leaves you no choice but to throw yourself against its hardest momentum-based jumps back to back until you've perfected them. Sisyphus doesn't really care to challenge you in those ways. The levels get tricky, sure, but you always know how to get past them off the bat. But then, what is the consequence of a mistake in this game versus, say, getting over it? I mentioned it at the start. The most unique thing about the game of Sisyphus is that it's time-gated. Cream makes this intention clear as day in their short description of the game. This game is an experience of the struggles of Sisyphus. It requires a great deal of patience for its slow-paced gameplay. In this game, even with the mastery of the controls, you cannot move quickly. Crucially, you take at least a couple of minutes for each of the 30 seconds, and the best way to prove this is looking at the speedruns. On the intended difficulty, completing the full game takes 1 hour. That's as opposed to every other game I've mentioned so far, which at most is a third of that. Pushing the ball is very slow, and there is a lot of ground to cover, which leads to even the best clears of this game taking so long. And now let's take a step back, because nobody's speedrunning this game on their first clear, which would make clearing the game longer for a variety of reasons, namely mistakes. While it may take you an hour to get to the top, a slip of the hand will separate you from the ball, and the second that happens, it's in freefall. Unless you immediately catch it, the ball is going to start rolling down and quickly get out of your grasp, plus outpace you, which means the only chance you have of catching it after just 5 seconds separated from the ball is if it happens to snag on an object. And if you haven't already noticed, the levels are specifically designed so there aren't any objects to snag on. They're all sloped or short so the ball scales them. At the beginning of the video, I referenced Northern Lion making one excruciating failure, and I think you're ready to see it now. This was 2 hours of progress.
Oh, that's bad. We'll just pray for mercy. Hold. There's a chance. It got a really bad roll. Come on, man. Come on. Just stay there for another cycle. Oh, it's threading the fucking needle, man. Hold. No, dude, no. Wow. Oh my God. It's going 50 meters a second, bro. Holy fuck. I had a long way to go still. The bamboo will save me. Yes. No. Oh, we were so close, man. No. It's gonna stop. Yeah! No! Dude, the butter too? It was in the holder. I'm just getting to the damn emeralds. I've been running for like 4 minutes. I gotta walk this shit up like one step at a time. The lava, there's not even like anything to slow it down. It's just a straight shot. This is such a long trip, dude. Oh, it's really starting to set in. I mean, is there any other game where when you like encounter misery, it's protracted over like several minutes, and then at multiple times over that period, they're like, don't worry, there's hope, and then they just take it away? Like, this is unique, man. Not even close. I don't even remember this part. There you go. Perfectly balanced as all things should. Yes, dude! Yes! Hanging by a fingernail 500 meters away. Whee! No! No! And nothing's stopping it there, man. I don't even want to think about it. Oh, please. Oh, okay, it's not getting out of there. We're not going back to the geysers. We're going back to the holder that's one past the geysers. Oh. I'm not even like messing with you. And Chad is not lying. That is like 2 hours of straight progress. Erased. Like, there was so much work erased that it took 10 minutes to erase it. Woohoo!
This is the meat and potatoes of Sisyphus that I am so infatuated with. In getting over it, you could backslide from the entire game in the span of 10 seconds. But Sisyphus revels in that backslide, a slide through a football field of molasses. Every single glance with an object giving you hope that it might just hold there, only to slip further down. Every second the ball's in freefall, equating to 1 minute of pushing the ball back up. And all you can do is run down the hill because no matter where the ball stops, it's going to be down there, and you're going to have to walk down to it yourself. It is the cruelest thing I have ever seen a game do to its players. It's cathartic. I'm sure everything about Sisyphus makes you feel like it'd be undesirable to play. Firstly, it's quite ugly and quite simple, which puts it in line with a lot of low effort indie slop. Combined with the rage game reputation makes it easy to cast this game aside as streamer bait for content creators to play twice, maybe beat it, maybe not, and forget about it in a month's time. Then, there's the actual gameplay, undeniably boring and monotonous to push this ball up this hill for at least an hour, plus any little mistake could cost you such a disproportionate amount of time. And it's absolutely soul-sucking to lose all that progress. It's a recipe for misery. But can we just take a step back while I say something kind of controversial? It's just a video game. Video games are supposed to be safe havens for all sorts of emotions. The sadness of a story game plucking at your heartstrings, the anger of an online game not going your way, the wicked satisfaction of finally solving a puzzle, and the only place you can leave your real-world stresses behind. I know I'm talking like Phil Spencer, but games truly have the power to transport you to a simulated world and expose emotions you normally wouldn't come across. At least, you wouldn't dream of getting as mad in real life as you would when your jungle gets diffed for the 10th time. But one day you might. And the exact same goes for Sisyphus. Sometimes in life, you just lose progress. You backslide. You thought you were making progress on something, and then a switch flips, and all signs start pointing to no, you practically have to redo this from scratch. You have to delete most of this paper. You have to delete most of this project. You have to undo most of your work on this canvas. Once you're in the moment, how do you find the courage to actually do that? To pick up the pieces and make do instead of just throwing it all away and starting from scratch, or hell, never starting again. Sisyphus is a statement to that. It's a safe place to prod at that weakness inside of all of us. What would we do in the face of 10 minutes of lost progress? 20? How about an hour or 2 hours? Would we still walk all the way down the hill and slowly push the ball back up, not knowing if there's going to be more setbacks or slowdowns on the way, but knowing for sure it's going to take a long time? There's no point in reaching the top of the hill, and we all know that. Unlike some real-life tasks, we can stop pushing the rock at any time, nothing would change. But deep down, we want to prove ourselves. We want to see ourselves overcome this micro-challenge on our character. To give up in the face of a technical challenge, that's every day. Most of us simply cannot run a 500 meter in under a minute, or beat Magnus Carlsen in chess. That's expected, and lightly technical challenges like a strange getting over it jump can feel like a brick wall in the same way to some people. In Sisyphus, there is no doubt it can be done because it's not technical at all. It is specifically challenging your character. Can you get back up when it puts you down? Do you have the will to go on after being put down again and again when it's this punishing? I think Sisyphus is such a significant body of work because it dares to make setbacks so time-consuming. Stripped of checkpoints and shortcuts, it emulates a true-to-life setback. There's one thing I haven't told you about the game of Sisyphus. I beat it. Before Northern Lion could beat it in 12 to 16 hours, that one clip inspired me to get the game in preparation of this essay, and I beat it. In 3 hours. It turns out when you're not reading chat and talking through the game, you can commit your undivided attention and basically never make a mistake. Sisyphus's key element is also its biggest downfall. It is not technically challenging at all. Northern Lion is the exception here. Most people beat this game within 5 hours. That's not nothing, but the lower limit is 1 hour, and not only did I do it in 3, my playthrough contained none of the fabulously horrific, catastrophic backslides Northern Lion suffered. I recorded my entire playthrough. At worst, I suffered a 10-minute setback, and if I'm not experiencing even a fraction of the setback Sisyphus is repeatedly capable of, that defeats its purpose or at least kneecaps it significantly. I'm singing my praises of how amazingly terrible it feels to fail in this game, but I never really failed, and admittedly, that's where Sisyphus falls short. Full stop. I wish I had some counter in defense of Sisyphus, but truthfully, the lesson at the heart of this game is bound to go over most people's heads. So, what? What was this video even for? To get you to fall in love with the idea of Sisyphus only to yank that away from you at the end? Not quite. I really respect the game of Sisyphus, as I hope I have proven, and I recommend it despite this last wrinkle because it's still a worthwhile challenge to get to the top, and there's fantastic replayability. You can replay the game with a lighter or much heavier ball or a bouncy one, but that's not the main takeaway either. I respect Sisyphus so much, I was inspired to iterate on its lesson. I made a game. My first ever game that I've developed alone since July, fittingly titled Bananafist, and this is its release announcement. You are a banana car with a ball and a chain. You chain yourself to the ball and drive it up the hill. For better or worse, the car controls make it significantly more technically challenging than Sisyphus. It is free to play on itch starting right now with the link in the description, and although it's not 30 seconds long, I hope it is even more brutal, more often, and that you don't complete it. Thank you for watching. Hit the like if you enjoyed, subscribe, and check out the game.